All right. The rest of us, we are going to flip to Acts chapter 23. We're going to pick up in verse 12 today. Verse 12 of Acts 23. And if you've been with us, you know we're going through this time of Paul's life where Paul knew that he felt this calling of the Holy Spirit while he was in Macedonia to go back to Jerusalem. Not only was he called to go back to Jerusalem, but he was warned that it was going to be hard, it was going to be difficult. Last week we saw it kind of reach its peak. He went on trial in front of the Sanhedrin. He immediately dropped a bomb on the Sanhedrin, which made them all start arguing with each other. But the division got so heated and so upsetting that they were going to kill Paul. He had really got them riled up. And so once again, he had to be escorted off the premises by the Romans. The Romans still don't know what to do with him. Right? The Romans are absolutely beside themselves because on one hand, he's a Roman citizen, so he gets all these extra rights and privileges. And on the other hand, he's a Jew and he's really causing a lot of problems. And they're like, we don't want, like, one of the things that the Roman Empire was known for is they love to establish order. They did not like problems. And when they caused problems, that was a big issue for the Romans. They would often put it down violently. And so the fact that things are not going quite as planned is not good for them. They don't like this. It's not good. So here we are. We're at the plot, we're at verse 12, where finally it says, so Paul was told by the Holy Spirit that he was going to go testify in Rome. And he was excited, like this was something that Paul wanted to do, right? Paul wanted to keep heading west, but he always was running into issues and he couldn't move west. So it says, the next morning some Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. More than 40 men were involved in this plot, and they went to the chief priests and the elders and said, we have taken a solemn oath not to eat anything until we have killed Paul. Now then, you and the Sanhedrin petition the commander and bring him before you on the pretext of wanting more accurate information about his case. We are ready to kill him before he gets here. They wanted to kill him in transport. Now, this is something interesting to me because I was thinking about this a lot, right? First off, we know that one of the 10 Commandments is you shall not murder. Now, oftentimes people will say you shall not kill, but that's not what it says. It says murder. And we need to understand that there is a difference between killing and murder. Most of us, like you say it and you kind of understand, yeah, there is a difference, right? Soldiers kill, right? And criminals murder, right? There's a difference. Because one has to do with intent, one has to do with with situation. We can kind of understand that there is a distinction and a difference, and that's what God is trying to draw us to when He gave us that commandment, right? It's one thing if you're going to be defending yourself that someone gets killed, or in the pursuit of justice, right? Here in Canada, we don't have the death penalty, but in countries that do, if you have the death penalty, and in the pursuit of justice, someone must be killed in order for justice to be attained. For example, here in this culture, right, back in the day, in Israel, there was a death penalty for many different crimes. And so in the pursuit of justice, killing was okay because you were doing it for a particular purpose. The reason I wanted to draw this out is because there's two parts to this thing. Number one, I really do think that these men thought that what they were doing was bringing justice, right? Because what was their main claim against Paul? That he was a blasphemer. Why? Because he kept saying that Jesus is Lord. He kept saying that Jesus is God. And he kept making all these wild claims to them that they had never heard before. And so I do truly think that these men thought that they were doing the will of God, and they thought they were pursuing justice. And that's why it says kill, not murder. The other thing is that I thought about was this. How upset do you need to be? What kind of zeal in your life do you need to have where you feel the need to take someone else's life? Now, I used to, when I was younger, and before I had Claire, I used to think only crazy people would do this. Now, maybe that's true, and maybe having children makes you crazy, because the moment that I had Claire and I looked down on her little face, I realized I had the capacity within me to kill somebody if they ever messed with my child, Right? Parents, you have this thing inside of you. We feel it, like we feel this overwhelming desire to protect and love and provide for this child. When we see the face of our child, certainly for the first time, it's funny because I've held a lot of children. I've dealt with a lot of babies, but there's something different when it is your own. When you're holding your own child, there's a connection there that is not like any other. And it can drive you to do some crazy things. But ultimately, the reason that it drives us to do crazy things is because we get this anger, this unforgiveness in our heart, right? Because if someone murdered someone in my family, let's say we have the death penalty here in Canada. Let's just imagine for a second we have the death penalty for murderers, right? If you kill someone, you get the death penalty. Okay. If someone comes and kills, say, my father, Jesus tells me that I need to forgive him. And this can often be a real challenge for a lot of people because people say, well, you're just going to let him off the hook? No. That's not what forgiveness is. And I think this is the problem with how we look at forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't releasing someone from responsibility. Releasing is drawing the poison out of your own heart, the venom out of your own soul, and saying, I'm going to let this go because I don't want this to destroy me. See, the thing is, when someone wrongs you, right? That's exactly what happens. When someone comes against you and wrongs you, sins against you, transgresses against you, it puts like a venom in your heart. And it's just natural for us humans to just want to, oh wow, I left my coffee right here. It's just natural for us humans to just want to get that vengeance. It's almost like a pursuit of justice, but it gets twisted. And we just want to get them back. And the problem is that the longer that we let that sit there, the longer that we let it fester, right? As anyone can say that's ever had an infection, if you've ever had an open wound and you let it get infected, the longer you leave it untreated, the longer you let it sit there, the worse it's going to get. And eventually, it could kill you. Well, that's the same with unforgiveness. If you're not willing to let go, if you're not willing to forgive, it corrupts you, it turns you into something, and makes you into the very monster that you're hunting. Right? This is something that was taught to us by Jesus in John chapter 8, verse 7. Right, and this is more famously for all of you that would remember this. This is the woman caught in adultery. And when Jesus is pursued about this, because they want to trap him. And it's funny, and you know it's a trap. How do you know it's a trap? Because where's the man? Right? If the woman was caught in adultery, in the act of the adultery, then it's not that the man gets off scot-free, right? There's rules and punishment for that as well. But they're purposely putting it on him. And anyway, it says, you without sin can cast the first stone. Right? We know this. Right? Jesus, he's kind of caught up. He's kind of doodling in the ground. And he says, you know what? You're right. What she did was wrong. And under the law, she deserves death. So you without sin, you can cast the first stone. What was Jesus trying to show us there? That all of us have sinned. All of us have fallen short. None of us deserve to be released from that, but ultimately at the end of the day, God is judge, and God's justice will be found. But of course, that's not where the story ends. It says in verse 16, but when the son of Paul's sister heard of this plot, he went into the barracks and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions and said, take this young man to the commander. He has something to tell him. So he took him to the commander. The centurion said, Paul, the prisoner, sent for me and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you. The commander took the young man by the hand, drew him aside and asked, what is it you want to tell me? He said, some Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul before the Sanhedrin tomorrow on the pretext of wanting some more accurate information about him. Don't give in to them, because more than 40 of them are waiting in ambush for him. They have taken an oath not to eat or drink until they've killed him. They are ready now, waiting for your consent to their request. So the commander dismissed the young man with this warning, don't tell anyone that you have reported this to me. You know, normally I don't feel bad for the Roman authority when I'm reading the Bible, but these poor guys, they've just been put through the ringer. They have no idea what's going on. Now they want to kill him. Now, not only did they want to kill them then, but now, even in the pursuit of justice, now they've resorted to deception, and they're willing to try and deceive the Romans in order that they could exact their own penalty on Paul. The problem for the Romans is that, according to their law, Paul hasn't done anything wrong. You got to remember, in a world and in a time where not only it's funny because we talk about tolerance and stuff like that today. Not only were the Jews very strange in their monotheism, because almost no society at that point were monotheistic. In fact, most societies accepted that all gods were gods. Right? That was one of the things about Romans. Right? Why do we have Jupiter and Zeus? Because they went, oh, we have the same god, but by a different name. You call him Zeus, we call him Jupiter. You have Ares, we have Mars. Right? You have I can't remember all the different. I'm trying to remember Neptune's. It was the ocean guy, and I can't remember his name. That's it, Poseidon. Thank you. You have Poseidon, we have Neptune. Right? They had, and their whole pantheon was laid out the exact same way. Because they all just accepted that, yes, of course, we've just found these gods by different ways. And so that was actually, it's funny, because one of the initial charges against Christians, because we only worshipped one God, we only worshipped Jesus, is that we were atheistic because we didn't believe in the other gods. Which is interesting today, because now we get attacked by atheists for not being atheist enough. Interestingly. So Paul is here, he's in a bind, the Roman commander's in a bind, and it says, so the Roman commander, he has to figure out, what am I going to do? So he calls 2 of his centurions and ordered them, get ready a detachment of 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen. Now you'll notice, if you're reading in your Bible, the word spearmen has like a little footnote there, and that's because they don't really know what these things were. They know they were some sort of soldier, but the translation isn't exact. So they know that ultimately there are 270 troops that are committed for him to go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. They are going to leave in the evening, travel under the cover of darkness to smuggle Paul out of the city. Verse 24, provide horses for Paul so that he may be taken safely to Governor Felix. And so he wrote this letter as follows: Claudius Lysias, to his excellency Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews, and they were about to kill him. But I came with my troops and rescued him, for I had learned that he is a Roman citizen. I wanted to know why they were accusing him, so I brought him to their Sanhedrin. I found that the accusation had to do with questions about their law, but there was no charge against him that deserved death or imprisonment. So when I was informed of a plot to be carried out against the man, I sent him to you at once. I also ordered his accusers to be present to you, to present to you their case against him. So the soldiers, carrying out their orders, took Paul with them during the night and brought him as far as Antipatris. And the next day they let the cavalry go on with him while they returned to the barracks. The cavalry arrived in Caesarea. They delivered the letter to the governor and handed Paul over to him. The governor read the letter and asked what province he was from. Learning that he was from Cilicia, he said, I will hear your case when your accusers get here. And then he ordered that Paul be kept under guard in Herod's palace. And that is the end of verse 23. Paul is finally out of Jerusalem. He's kind of probably going to be the safest now that he's going to be for a while, until he finally gets sent to Rome, and even then he's not entirely safe. He stands accused of capital crimes by the Jews, and of course the Romans don't know what to do with him. The Romans have no idea how to deal with this man who comes out and he's preaching this Jesus. And all of this is something that Paul knew about, Paul was warned about, Paul had foreknowledge of when he first left Macedonia. See, Paul, when he was living high on the hog, when he was the popular guy, when he was going from city to city, church to church, and people loved him, they respected him, they were coming to him for advice, they were looking to him for his teaching, for his knowledge, for his wisdom on the scriptures, Paul was living life up real good. And if he lived in 2020, right, today, here in 2025, people would be like, you know what, Paul, you take it easy, be safe. Don't go where it's dangerous, Paul. You're too valuable. In fact, we know about some people that tried to do this. Many of you have heard me say this before too, that I think safe is one of the most offensive words that can come out of a Christian's mouth. We're not called to be safe. We're not called to safety. We're called to adventure. We're called to a life of twists and turns and ups and downs, of peaks and valleys. We're called to a life where life is not going to be safe. There's going to be some really good times and there's going to be some really bad times. And if you've been a Christian for a while in your life, you know that this is true. That even when things get really, really bad, you know you're not going to stay there forever. As long as we trust God, as long as we follow His word, we follow His teaching, God will not leave us there. See, Paul knew all the trouble that awaited him. Paul had gone through the peaks, and now Paul is down in the valley. Paul is experiencing a really rough time. But you know what? Not once do we see Paul relent. We don't see Paul recant. We don't see Paul complain about his mistreatment. He doesn't say, I can't believe that God would allow me. If God was a just God, why doesn't God do something for me? He knows that God is a just God and that God's justice will prevail. God's justice will arrive. And in the meantime, he is just in the process of his adventure. See, safety is the exact opposite. And in fact, there's a reason why we have the popular saying, nothing ventured, nothing gained. If you're not willing to risk anything, if you're not willing to put anything on the line, if you're not willing to say yes to anything, to commit to any sort of adventure in your life, then how on earth do you expect that God is going to show up and do amazing things? If you're not willing to give God that leeway in your life to allow him to be able to do those things, then how on earth are you going to be a part of it? See, safety, when we pursue safety, when we go after that security, when we want to have that shelter and be sheltered from the adversity of hard life, the problem is that is living life stuck in the mud. And I don't know about you, but that's not what I want for me and my family. I don't want to have a stuck in the mud life where I'm spinning my tires, doing the same thing day in, day out, where I don't have any sort of change up, where I don't get to see the wonders of God, where I don't get to hear and see the wonderful movings of God, where I don't get to be a part of what God is doing in this world. I want to have that adventure. I want to be a part of seeing what God is going to do. But that means that if we're going to do that, we need to risk it. We need to go for that adventure. We need to seek after God, and we need to be willing to risk it, just like Paul did. See, Paul was given every warning. Paul was given every opportunity to walk away, and Paul was given a chance, if you will, to avoid all this pain and suffering. But Paul knew that if I trust in God, if I allow God to lead me, no matter what I end up going through, no matter what adversity I go through, no matter what challenges I'm in, God's going to use this to expand his kingdom. This is going to be used to make sure that God is revealed to all. So I ask you today, are you willing to take a risk? Are you willing to venture out into the world? Are you willing to take a risk, take a chance, and allow God to transform you, to allow God to take you on the adventure of your life and do something amazing?